and welcome to another episode of Pixelated Harmony, the voices behind video game music. I am super pumped to introduce my next guest. He is an absolute legend and the man behind the music that shaped Halo and Destiny. Marty O'Donnell joins us. How are you doing, my friend? Thank you so much for taking the time and joining the show.
Well, thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate that. Was a great introduction. I wasn't expecting that. It's a lot more exciting than I thought. That's great. I'm doing well.
Good. No, we are definitely here to bring the vibes and talk about the music. Again, like I said, that have just shaped not only video games and that genre, but so many lives. So I want to jump right into it. And before we talk about the Halo, the Destiny, all that stuff, I want to take it back a little bit and go kind of not necessarily from the beginning, but kind of where did your passion for music come from leading into, I know that you worked on Little Shop of Horrors. Again, another iconic classic film. So please tell us about that.
No, that's actually, I never worked on Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Yeah, there was somebody else that has my name, and it shows up, I think, on IMDb.
On IMDb, yes.
Yeah, and I can't get it removed. The poor other Martin O'Donnell who did sound effects or something on that.
Sound engineer. I was like, I had no idea.
No, I never did that. I don't know who that was, but no, I did not work on that. Although I got to say that the Gravemind in Halo 2 and Halo 3 looked a little bit like the big giant plant from Little Shop of Horrors. So there might be a slight connection there. I don't know. I was probably 4 years old. My mom was a piano teacher, and we had we had an upright piano in my house when I was 4. And I'd always, play it when I'd walk through the living room and I'd reach up to play the piano. And she, taught me very easily different things. Every time I went to the piano, she would teach me a little something. And then when I was 7, I started taking real piano lessons from a normal teacher. And then my dad actually started off as a disc jockey, and then he was a film director. And, he worked a lot with music, and, I watched how that worked, and he and I would watch movies together. And I think there was a movie called Ben-Hur that was made in 1959. And I heard that score when I was just a, teeny little kid. And my dad brought home the soundtrack album, which at that point was a big vinyl album. And I just remember falling in love with that, thinking that would be cool to do. But rather than go, a couple of things happened when I was 9. I know you said don't go all the way back, but I'll go back this far. I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
Nice.
And, just like everybody else in the United States and the world, basically, but especially the United States, we all just were changed at that moment. The British invasion, I was like, that's it. I want to be a rock star. I want to be Paul McCartney. Which is funny because fast forward many, many, many years later, I actually got to work with Paul McCartney.
Yes.
And that was,
Talk about full circle.
It's totally full circle. But that same year, I also saw on TV, I saw Barry Goldwater introduced to the political landscape by Ronald Reagan. And I was 9, and I decided, I think I'm a Republican conservative. And but the Beatles were a bigger influence, so I went into music rather than politics. And now in my retirement years, I'm sort of dipping back into politics. So it's pretty funny.
That is awesome. I love that. And again, that is like multiple full circle moments that have happened, which is absolutely fantastic. And speaking of that and kind of having that influence from your parents and then getting into more of your formative years, what was it that kind of drove you to continue with that passion and exploration within music?
Well, I played piano all the way through grade school, junior high, high school. I was in a couple bands, but it was always playing other people's music. And then when I got to college, I was actually a piano major at a conservatory of music, and I was a piano performance major. And I thought I was just going to go down the road of playing the piano and learning piano literature and history and pedagogy and all of this stuff, very
Hmm.
serious. But I also had a sort of a fusion progressive rock band that I started while I was in college. And we covered all sorts of like really complex stuff. And the drummer one day said, "Hey, you're good at, you teach us all the different parts." Like I would be the one who figured out all the parts to some of these more complex songs.
Hmm.
And he says, "You have a really good ear, but why don't you ever write music?" And I was like, I didn't know that was a. Do I have permission to write music? It was really kind of a shock to me that somebody said you could write music, and so
Yeah.
I stopped what I was doing. I literally went up the stairs because the band rehearsed in my parents' basement. I went up the
Hmm.
stairs to the piano. I wrote a piece with the guys in the band in mind, like Larry's going to play this part, and Walt will play this, and Bill will play that, and Tim will play this. Anyway, I brought it back down to the guys, and they loved it, and I just loved writing music. And so at that point, I thought, well, maybe I spent a little more time with the band and I was writing music for the band and we had some, local success, I would say.
Hmm.
Nothing went crazy, but people seemed to like what we were doing and they liked the music I wrote. And I liked writing music more than performing as a piano major. Just sitting
Hmm.
on the stage with a spotlight on and at the grand piano having to do this thing from memory, that just drove me crazy. And I'm like, why do I want to do something that is torturing me? I want to be in a band? I was able to remember back to my 9-year-old days where I want to be a rock star. So
Yeah.
I chose to be a progressive rock star, which is like, there aren't many of those.
Hmm.
Let's just say progressive rock had its day, but it was not, Yes was big, and Jethro Tull was big, and
Yeah.
King Crimson was big, and those were my heroes. So that's the stuff I was emulating. Um, but I never even thought about making a living, truly making a living. But I went to grad school. After I got my undergraduate degree in music composition. Then I got a master's from USC
Hmm.
in music composition. And then I moved back to Chicago from Los Angeles and started. I hooked up with my friend of mine, Mike Salvatore,
Hmm.
who had built
Yep.
a little 8-track studio in his house. And I got a gig. I said, "Hey, Mike, I'll split the money with you. Let's do this thing." I had no equipment. He had the equipment. I had the connections.
Hmm.
And, we were partners for a million years after that. So it's pretty fun.
Yeah, that is absolutely that is amazing. So are you originally from the Chicago area?
Yeah, I grew
Okay.
up in Chicago, went to school, undergrad in Chicago, and then I moved to Los Angeles to go to grad school. We were there
Hmm.
about 3.5 years. My daughter was born there, and then we moved back to Chicago. I was actually going to get a job at the American Conservatory of Music in downtown Chicago, and then that
Hmm.
fell through. But while I still thought I was going to get that job, I was gripping on a movie set for
Okay.
a couple of directors in Chicago because I knew
Hmm.
how to grip. Like I said, my dad had been a director, so I had sort of grown up on movie sets, and I was able to do some of that stuff. And the director came to me one day and said, I'll give you $500 if you score this film that we're doing. And I'm like, absolutely, that's great. Let's do it.
Like, yes, please.
Yes.
I've been waiting for this moment.
Well, actually, let me just say the funny part was the producer actually had talked to me the day before, and she said, "Marty, you have a master's degree in music composition. Why aren't you doing music for film and television here in Chicago?" And I said, "Well, I don't want to prostitute my art." So
That's
literally the next day,
fantastic.
the director said, "I'll give you $500," and I'm like, "Yes, that's the way to do it." I just didn't know
Apparently,
what
I
my
do
price
want to
was.
prostitute my art.
Exactly right.
That is fantastic. And was it kind of like from there that like where was that kind of introduction into video games? Was that something that you had already like been interested in or had heard about or just something that you just kind of stumbled upon?
Well, I had actually my introduction to video games goes back into the 70s when, Pong first came for home. You could play
Yes.
Pong at home, on the Magnavox, whatever, with the two joysticks. And then, you stuck something on your screen and it turned into a hockey game, even though everything was the same, right?
Yes.
Um, so that was fascinating. And then a friend of mine introduced me to some text adventure games, Zork, that I could play on this mainframe that he had. He had a little remote keyboard and a modem, and we logged into this mainframe and started playing this weird text adventure game. It wasn't even at the time. It wasn't called Zork. I think it was called Dungeon,
Hmm.
and it was a shareware thing, and it has this class. Anybody who knows text adventures knows what I'm talking about. But it had the classic start where it says you're standing in front of a White House. There's a mailbox there. And, I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, open the mailbox. He says, type that in. He goes, so I open mailbox, and the text goes across and says, you've opened the mailbox. There's a letter there. And I'm like, wow, this is so cool. So I was hooked immediately, but was never interested in actually making them, or there was, if you could think about the fidelity of audio and music and
Hmm.
everything else, video was later, but the fidelity of all that stuff was so low res, and 8-bit. By
Right.
the time the first Nintendo console came out, the early Atari consoles were and some of those, I forget what they were, but Commodore or whatever. I mean, some of
Yeah,
that stuff
Commodore
just looked so
64
bad.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But by the time, I got hooked on the Nintendo, the first Nintendo, and I played Zelda and Mario, and I had a lot of fun with it. I thought it was great, but it never occurred to me that the fidelity of the music and sound and acting and all those things that I
Hmm.
was doing in films and television would ever catch up. And I had my company that did film and television jingles and film scores for, let's see, we worked from like 1982 through 1993
Hmm.
exclusively in film and television. And it was around 1993 that I saw, I had a friend whose son was working on this game called Myst. And he brought the
Oh
beta
yeah.
version of, yeah, he brought the beta version of Myst to my house. He was a young guy. He was 18, and he showed it to me, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I missed it! I missed, right?" Um, but I thought I had really kind of like, I thought the train had gone by me. I'm like, I wasn't paying
Yeah.
attention, and suddenly there was like, what it felt like, cinematic music and cinematic sound design and voice acting. It was all starting to come together in Mist, and now, of course, Mist seems very primitive, but I saw the potential in Mist. So I said to this kid, like, you got to introduce me to those guys who are making this game. And he
Hmm.
did. It was Robin and Rand Miller. There's two brothers who lived in Spokane, Washington. And I weaseled my way in to get to know them and figure out how to. And I was the audio lead on Riven, the sequel to
Yes.
Mist, which came out in '97. And that was my first game that I worked on, was Riven. So I was pretty happy with that. And at the same time, I was working on Riven. There was a company in Chicago. It was weird because there weren't many companies in Chicago working on cool video games, but the guys at Cyan who were making Riven in
Hmm.
Spokane were playing a game called Marathon, which I saw them
Oh,
play, and I'm like, who are these guys? And it was like, there's this company in Chicago, and I'm like, well, I'm in Chicago, like.
yeah.
So I met those guys, the Bungie guys, and they hired me to do their next game, which was Myth: The Fallen Lords, and the rest is history. So that's how
That
that worked out.
is. Yeah, no, that is insane. And just I mean being able to see that perspective too where you're playing the games and like you said the sound was very primitive and
Yeah,
basic. And just to see that wait a second, now all of a sudden we're seeing or not seeing but rather hearing cinematic scores
yeah,
and just how much music has evolved in video games has been fascinating, and the fact that you have been on the ground floor of that evolution. And obviously we've got to go into starting off with Halo. I mean,
Sure.
I'm a person now, and I'm gonna be completely candid. I have only beaten the first Halo.
Okay.
Yeah, I never had an Xbox or anything like that growing up. So finally having a PC, I was able to get Game Pass. It's the collections on Game Pass. I was like, I've got to. This is a must on the list. So it's that.
Okay.
It's
Cool.
Gears of War. So
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
so I'm experiencing it for the first time now, and it's just it's so iconic. Even back, when that was out, that is something that I've known that like you hear that and you're just like, oh, Halo. It's so yeah. Oh,
Oh.
chills, absolute chills.
Well, that's me
Please,
singing too. I'm singing with my
is it?
four. Yeah. Oh yeah. I
Oh
was.
my goodness.
I wrote that in the car on the way to the studio. I'm like, okay, I need to have something that feels really ancient, and the monk
Hmm.
chant. I'm like, I'll write a Gregorian chant, in Dorian mode, and I wrote that on the way to the studio, and I sang it for Mike. He goes, okay, yeah, let's do that. So the next day, we were in the studio, and I had my other male singers that I hired. Like I would have, there I had three guys I wanted to hire because, like in the union, the cheapest group you can hire is called Group Three. So you hire
Hmm.
three good singers, and then you mulch yourselves. You layer yourselves a few times to make it
Hmm.
sound bigger. And these were guys who had probably the week before come to the studio to sing Mr. Clean, because we did Mr. Clean commercials.
That is
So
amazing.
the Mr. Clean guys came over, and I said, okay, we got to do this Gregorian monk chant. And they're like, oh, that's cool. So that's what we did. And it was, me and Mike and three, jingle singers doing the Halo theme at that point. Nobody thought it was going to be, you know, iconic. We weren't thinking
Right.
iconic. We were just thinking, let's get this thing done. And that's how we did it.
Yeah. So, and obviously going through something, no one can have the foresight to be like, oh, this is going to be something that's absolutely amazing and span generations. You know what I mean?
Well, I
Um,
certainly never thought I'd be talking about it 26 years later. So it was 1999 that we did the first music, and it had the monk chant at the beginning, and then the cellos, da 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 da, and all that whole thing. So it sounded pretty good, and it still sounds good. But that's something, I knew how to write for orchestra and choirs, and record
mhm.
and do professional sounding stuff. It just was such a fun opportunity to get to do that quality of music for a video game that hadn't been done a lot up to that point. So, and I didn't even know at the time we were doing it to show the video game, the early version of Halo, at
Mhm.
Macworld in New York with Steve Jobs. So I thought it was just going to be a one and done. We'll show Halo. There'll be a big audience in New York, and Steve Jobs introduces it, and we play this music while the cool thing is happening, and maybe that'll be the only time. Well, actually, because I'm a jingle guy, I thought, I'm going to make it hooky, so I'm going to make there's going to be a hook in here, so they're going to have to use it again if people like it. But I was thinking maybe this will show up one or two more times. But I certainly never thought I'd be still talking about it 26 years later into the future.
Yeah, and this what did that process I guess look like in terms of being able to craft the sound? Was it something that they were like, "Hey, here's our vision of this," or did they show you guys videos? Did they give you guys like hands on? Like, what did that look like when it came to crafting not only the soundtrack of it, but like going as deep as the sound design into what the lasers are going to sound like, the
Right.
the aliens, all that stuff.
Well, we had done Myth: The Fallen Lords, and then we did
Hmm.
Myth 2: Soulblighter, the sequel. And I knew the guys at Bungie really well, and I knew that the new thing they were working on was this. I think we had the code name was Monkey Nuts, and then Jason Jones, the guy who started the company, didn't want his mom to know that he was working on something called Monkey Nuts, so we changed it to Blam. And then, so I was working on it when it was called Blam, and I was just doing nothing but sound design. I was like working on, okay, how does the rocket launcher sound? How do the, the plasma pistols, and we were just working on weapons and some of the vehicles, the Warthog.
Hmm.
Um, and it was, it was coming together pretty good, but it was very much just sort of a technical demo that looked really cool and played really fun, but we didn't have a concept of, at the beginning, we didn't even have the concept of the Halo ring. We didn't know that's what we were
Right.
just going to be, this big open world environment. Um, and when we had the opportunity in 1999 to show what we were doing with some new graphic hardware, um, which was OpenGL, that Steve Jobs was running on the Mac. So he wanted to show off OpenGL and show that he had just come back to Apple. He had only been there a year, and he was trying to show the public that he was serious about pushing, Macintosh into the future and bringing games back to the Mac, because there weren't many games on the Mac. So when we had this opportunity to show that, um, the problem was we had been developing everything on the PC. So we
Hmm.
had no sound engine on the Mac at that point. So we were going to show this thing off. It looked really pretty. The guys had ported the code to work on this new graphic hardware on the Mac, and it looked great, but it had no sound at all. And we had no time to develop a sound engine for the Mac that would support all the sound design that I had done up to that point. So I said, look, let me just, if we're going to do a scripted demo live on stage with the Mac actually playing the actual game itself live, let's just have a music score that goes behind it, and we'll just play it off of a CD. Somebody will hit start on the CD and play it simultaneously. So that's what we did. So I had, I saw what they were doing because I was working with them all the time, working on sound design on the
Hmm.
PC. And I'd already I've shipped a couple of games with them, so that part was, I was very deeply embedded in the team. I wasn't an employee yet of Bungie. That happened a year later, a little more than, yeah, about a year later it happened. So that's how that worked out. It was just like, I knew what they were doing, and it was like the best thing to do was to show the graphics and have a music score playing in the background. And I thought, let me do a big blown out cinematic strings and percussion and singers and just blow everybody away, see what happens. So that's how we did that.
I love that, and again, it's taken something that I feel like wasn't really, it was kind of an afterthought almost. And it really brought that to not only the forefront, but it almost becomes a character within the game itself. There's an expectation to have that. It is synonymous, with Master Chief and this story and everything that's going on in terms of that. So I just love the fact that you were able to not only, but you were right from the jump off, just very deeply embedded with what was going on, being able to get a feel and understanding as to how the music's going to relate to the story and vice versa. And I feel like it really shows. And then, of course, through the years, we've had it, there's been iterations of it and whatnot into where, and I know that you worked on the music as well for, or I don't know if it was like a direct working with them for the TV show. I think it was on Peacock, I want to say.
It was
Here,
on Paramount. If it
Paramount,
was
Paramount,
Paramount, and then
yes.
yeah, I'm not sure if it's moved over to something else. Yeah, they did 2 seasons. I didn't work with anybody over there, but they rearranged the themes and they did the same music. They had a couple different composers work on the TV shows. Um, and we got name credit at the end, so I'm like, okay, great.
It's
You're
like, look,
still using my melodies, so there you go.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, as long as that check cashes is in the mail, we good. So
There you go. No problem. didn't have
Yeah,
to do any work.
absolutely. And then, kind of shifting a little bit, for me especially, I am a huge Destiny fan. It is something that, for me anyway, it's personal because that's when I really started getting into playing multiplayer games, playing with people I had never known,
Mm.
turning into where I've met these people in real life from a clan that I was a part of, and this came from Destiny. I played during the beta. Like I was
Okay,
an
cool.
early adopter of Destiny, and I was waiting for it.
Wow.
This was my first chance to be able to play a game from Bungie. I was always watching people enjoying Halo and be like, I don't have it. It looks like fun. I played a little bit of it. I'd love to be able to, but I can't. And then there's Destiny. It's like, yes, I'm in. I'm all for it.
Did you start on the PS3 or did you get a PS4?
I had it on PS4. I had it on
Okay.
PS4.
All
Yes.
right.
Yep. So I had it on PS4, and
Okay.
it just it just changed everything for me in terms of gaming and how I interact with people and how I saw uh, just how people were socializing now in
Sure.
this time. And I will be, I'm gonna be completely real. Your music has made me cry, sir. Your music has made me cry. There's so many moments, and the music, it plays such an integral part within that. Please tell me what was that process like? Them kind of laying that on you, what the expectations were, and then kind of crafting out what is the glory of the Destiny and Destiny 2
Well, this
music
goes back
library.
to, I mean, the last game we did for Halo was Halo Reach. We shipped that in
Hmm.
2010, and then we all shifted over. We knew we were going to start working on Destiny,
Hmm.
and we had 10 years. We had a full decade of Halo. So there was 10 years worth of Halo music. I mean, you called Bungie and you got Halo music on your hold call, right? It's like so. Um, and suddenly I'm like, hey, we have to throw all this music away in terms of what we're doing. We got to come up with all brand new stuff. And I'm the kind of composer that's inspired by the story, by graphics, by gameplay, by game design. Like I want it to be super integrated. But we were really early in development, 2010 and 2011. We were sort of behind. Destiny wasn't as advanced as it needed to be. We had some really beautiful concept art, but it was like all over the place. There was fantasy elements. There were we didn't know exactly what it was going to be, so there was a lot of
Hmm.
discussion. And at one point, some of the leads in the studio were like, Marty, we really love listening to your music, and your music inspires us to do things. And I'm like, well, I don't get inspired to do music unless I see the stuff you guys are doing. So which comes first? Like, how am I supposed to do this? So we talked about it, and we knew that there was going to be the Traveler. We knew it was going to be in our solar system. We knew the sort of cool story. And somebody came up with this just general concept. It's like, Marty, what if you did a prequel album, like music that's the prequel to
Mm.
Destiny? Like it doesn't have to be related to anything specific. And that's when I came up with the idea of doing this thing called Music of the Spheres. So I worked on that Music of the Spheres prequel album for almost 2 years. The very first thing I did was some of that sort of really kind of spacey ambient music
Hmm.
that you get when you're in the main menu. But I did that first just to get a new flavor that was not Halo. It was this new thing. And
Hmm.
then I was like, okay, now I'm going to write a concept album called Music of the Spheres. And I planned 8 movements, and each one, the first 7 movements all symbolized each one of the planets in our solar system. And then I thought the last movement would be the Hope. I called it the Hope. And it was based on the fact that the Traveler was sitting over the last safe city on Earth.
Hmm.
And so I had the 7 planets, and then I had the Hope, which was the Traveler. And I ended up somehow convincing Paul McCartney to join in on writing the music and working on it with me. And we had this great 2-year relationship. So I got Mike to leave Chicago, and he came out to Seattle, and I showed him my plan. I showed him the themes I was working on. So Mike and I were working close on it, and
Mhm.
then we got Paul McCartney to work with us, and we did this thing, big session in Abbey Road with 120-piece orchestra and 40
Oh
voice
wow.
choir and a boys choir. It was just great. So all the music in Destiny 1 comes almost all the music in Destiny 1 comes from that work we did on the prequel album called Music of the Spheres. Um, so like all the major themes come from that, and the orchestral recordings. So that was really amazing. It was a blast because I had so much freedom just to think about writing music, based on concepts and stories and ideas rather than specific moments in the gameplay or cinematics or anything like that. And that was really fun. Unfortunately, my part didn't last as long as I was hoping. There was some controversy, and I don't know how much you know about this, but like they ended up letting me go. I was fired about a month before Halo or before Destiny um, shipped. Um, and that's a long story. It has to do with mostly business reasons. It was
Of
wasn't
course.
There was some creative differences because I wasn't happy with some of the influence of Activision over the
Hmm.
Bungie process on Destiny. I didn't like some of how the story got changed, and there were some things I just disagreed on, and so we parted ways. But Mike stayed with them, and thankfully he got all the music in the game, so I, it's still in there.
Yes. No. Excuse me. And I remember too, and just kind of going back a little bit as well, and making that transition. Uh, is that something difficult to do, especially the fact that Halo is a story obviously that's taking place in space.
Yeah.
You've got something similar with Destiny as well, kind of, being able to, you've got something that, again, with so much iconic music and sound design and stuff like that, to be able to then shift over to a completely new IP, something that's different. Is that something that's challenging for you to do, to be able to make that shift, or is that something that you kind of like take some of what you've done in the past and use maybe some of that as inspiration?
I don't I can't help, you know, whatever stylistic things like people go, "Oh, that sounds like something you would write." I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like I don't think about it that way, but I do. I like to start like with the Halo universe, that first instinct to say, okay, there's something very ancient about Halo. There's these ancient races, there's religious connotations. So I'm going to use Gregorian chant,
Hmm.
and that in order to sound like Gregorian chant, you use one of the old church modes, which is not major or minor. It's a mode. So I use Dorian mode,
Hmm.
and so believe it or not, as I went along, we did that kind of music for Halo 1, 2, and 3, and then we did this other game in the Halo universe called ODST, and
Yes.
that was going to be a whole different story without Master Chief. It was taking place on Earth. It was, humans who are ODST soldiers. And it was going to be like a cool film noir detective novel.
Hmm.
And, the idea was like, what if we did like cool jazzy stuff? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. So then now I'm working with jazz. So I didn't have to worry that much about the Dorian mode anymore.
Right.
And then for Reach, I thought, well, Reach is happening on, that was the fifth game we did in the Halo series. And once again, I was looking at the story, and it's, there's this planet called Reach that was settled by Hungarian, Eastern European settlers who like went out and settled this planet. And I thought, okay,
Hmm.
Eastern European, I'm going to use the Phrygian mode, which always sounds just a little bit, um, ethnic. It has a slightly
Hmm.
ethnic feel to it. It's hard to describe for people who are not, um, you know, versed in music theory. Okay. Like
Right.
I'm not like just, hey, look at the music theory I know. It's just, it's a good starting place for me. So
Mhm.
Phrygian gives me this sort of gypsy Eastern European feel. So I
Okay.
did a lot of stuff in that area. And then when we got to Destiny, I'm like, okay, I got to do something. Believe it or not, there was a point at which we were working on early Destiny concepts at the same time I was doing Reach and ODST. And so that was
Oh,
hard to like come up with three distinct areas of music in my own
yeah.
brain that would stay separate. So you know, ODST's jazz, Reach is Halo, but Phrygian. And then I thought, okay, I got to come up with a new mode for Destiny. So I came up with this. I was playing around, and there's this. It's a famous mode. It's sort of a impressionistic mode, right? It comes
Hmm.
from Debussy and Ravel, and it's a Lydian mode. So it has a sharp fourth degree of the scale and then a flat seventh degree of the scale. And it
Hmm.
sort of has, so it has a major sound with this like really kind of cool, magical raised fourth, but with the flat seven. So it's just a really beautiful mode. And once you sort of figure out, and I'm not saying we were strict to those modes, it's just like it's just sort of a nice place to start,
Right.
write melodies and chord progressions that like are hinting around that modal area. And immediately, it's almost like saying this is going to be green and this other thing is going to be red and this thing's going to be blue. It's just like, it doesn't mean everything in it is blue, but it's like
Right.
overall that's the color palette is going to be in the cool blues. And I could be in the jazz color palette and the Phrygian color palette and then this Lydian flat four color palette. And I was able to sort of separate everything that way. And I'm sorry, but we probably just lost half your audience because they're like,
No,
what
I
the
think
heck
this
is
is
this guy?
fantastic. No, I
Okay.
mean, I think this is fantastic, especially when you get into this and being able to see or at least hear about the how you break it down and from a technical
Yeah.
aspect. And and because I was gonna go a little deeper and say because you're saying a mode, what does that mean? Can you give us a little context in terms of
Sure.
what that means? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in music theory, most people know that there's the major scale and the minor scale. They know
Mm-hmm.
something's major or something's minor. And those are the two just sort of normal, common practice modes. Um, but then there are more ancient ways of doing a scale. And a scale in Western music is basically 8 notes in a row. Da 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 da. That's a major scale. Da 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 da. That's like a natural minor scale. So if you change the intervals in any of these scales by one half step,
Mm-hmm.
it causes different harmonies to occur. And so the modes are what they go all the way back in terms of the modes that we know about to the Middle Ages, believe it or not. And they're just different scales, um, that each scale has, a slightly different whole step, half step um, pattern. So
Right.
like the major scale, what we're used to is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And it goes up the 8 degrees. It's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the distance between each pitch is whole steps and half steps. And that's what makes it a major scale. But if you go whole step, half step, now that's a minor third instead of whole step, which is a major
Right.
third. I'm probably not explaining this well, but I mean, it just has to do with there's a scale that underlies how you write melodies and how you find your harmonies. And most, especially self-taught musicians, they're not thinking about it necessarily, but a lot
Right.
of guitar players understand the modes because modes are just something that you put your hand in a position and you learn how to play scales up and down the fretboard, and you will learn, yeah, I'm going to play major, going to play minor, I'm going to play Dorian, I'm going to play Mixolydian. um, Believe it or not, most rock and roll, like 90% of rock and roll, is in the mode Mixolydian,
Hmm.
which is it's basically it's a major scale with what we would, you know compared to the normal major scale. Instead of Ti do, which is a half step, going back
Mm-hmm.
home. Coming home, it's da-dum. It's a whole step. Dun, 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 dun. That's it. Like,
Ah.
and that's it. But if it was da
Yeah.
da 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 da, that's kind of that sounds wimpy. But da 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 da, like that's a whole step. It's a lowered seventh moving to the tonic, which is your home pitch. Um, so something as simple as Mixolydian, you know, that's what rock and roll sounds like. And
Mm-hmm.
compared to jazz and compared to classical music, rock and roll sits in a different spot, sort of emotionally and creatively because of this one small difference in the scale. So the what you choose as your scale to sort of dictate how you write music really can change things quite a bit. So there's also just the chromatic scale, which is all half steps and lush, thick, romantic orchestra music from the late 19th century is
Mm-hmm.
very chromatic, and a lot of movie scores are very chromatic. And I tend to like things that are not super chromatic. I like the simplicity of major scales, minor scales, and the modal scales. So it's a discipline. You sort of like say to yourself, what can I write using a smaller palette of colors, essentially, from a musical standpoint.
Yeah,
So
no,
there you
that
go.
I think no, that totally makes sense in
Okay.
terms of yeah, like what you mean in terms of modes and how they kind of change and like how the harmony change and you just get different feels even though it's yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And it that's a lot. That would be a lot to manage, like going back and being like, "All right, we're working on Destiny. What was it again that I'm like?" Did you like? Do you have like a notebook or something,
I
or
do.
is
I did
okay?
have notebooks with sketches in it, and like I work with a digital audio workstation, so a lot of times I'll improvise into it, and then I'm like, okay, what was I doing again? I hit play on something. Oh, okay, yeah, now I'm back into it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I rely on all those things to make sure I didn't mix jazz into my Destiny score if I could help it.
This is odd. This is seems like it's out of left field, but I'm kind of feeling it.
Exactly.
That would be fantastic. Is it and let me ask too. Do you are you currently do you play the games? Have you is that something that you were into or for you was it more about just kind of hey, I've got this story that's evolving and it's so robust, to be able to play in.
Well, with Halo, I was super involved, and I ended up playing I've played every version of Halo, and I've beaten it at Legendary. So every version of Halo
Yes.
is Legendary. Working on Destiny, I was very involved until I got to the point where we were having some of these creative differences. And then
Mhm.
that was sort of painful enough as a, as a break. I really didn't I just really didn't play Destiny. I didn't get to do on Destiny the sort of final polish that I wanted to do because I was, gone. So I didn't play Destiny. So I never got I mean that's a 10-year game, and I know you know, how much people love the game and have played it
Mhm.
heavily, but I just sort of didn't get into it. I started another game company and we made a couple of other products that, were nowhere near as successful. They were small teams and, I had a really good time with that. But in terms of the games that I, enjoy playing even to this day, you know, when, when I saw the new Zelda come out, Breath of the Wild, I loved it. And then I played Tears of the Kingdom and those are the kind of games I still love those games. So I played some Elden Ring. Probably didn't go stay in it as long as I wanted to. I'm probably not putting the same kind of hours in games that I used to.
Yeah.
But I totally get it. Games are amazing. Video games can be truly, truly amazing. And some of the scores. Now, I'm a I'm thinking that I might need to go ahead and pick up a PS5. I don't have a PS5 yet, so I don't have the
Okay.
latest greatest. I haven't gotten the Switch 2. Um,
Mhm.
I'm not sure why I would, but I'm sure if there's some Zelda product that I want real bad, I'll get a Switch too.
That's yeah, yep. It's still
But
early on, yeah.
yeah, yeah. But there's this game called Claire Obscure, which
Oh
is
yes.
in whatever Expedition 33.
Mm-hmm.
All the people that I really respect in the game industry, they're saying, Marty, you got to play this game. The music is amazing. The game is amazing. The acting's amazing. So many people have told me that. I'm like, okay, well, I can't miss out on this game. I'm going to have to get it and play it. So I haven't done that yet, but I will.
I'm right there with you. I still haven't played it. I totally have it because I have Game Pass. It's
Oh,
on
good.
Game Pass. Yeah. So it's like I know it. I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah,
So
like
like
tremendous things.
yeah, so it's definitely very high on my list. It's hard. There's a lot of great games
There's so
that
many
are
great
out
games.
right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like there's only so much time in a day. You got to be a person. You know, some of us have kids. Like
Kids
you
and
know, I
jobs and grandkids and yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, look, let me. I try to sneak in a few hours late at night. The kids are in bed. Everybody's in bed. Like, let me get a little bit of time in,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
then we're good. So, yeah, it is. And what is that? So I know that you know, since then, is there any other like projects that you've worked on since? You know, music wise, I know that you've also I'll say semi-retired, and we'll get to that here in a few. But
Sure.
yeah, what about projects you know since then and things that you've been working on?
Well, let's see. I started this game company called Highwire Games, and
Okay.
we worked for quite a while at the early stages of VR, and then we ended up being at the early stages of the PlayStation VR, PSVR, and it was really interesting. And we made a game called Golem, and the music for that I released as a soundtrack album is called Echoes of the First Dreamer. And I really love it. I think there's some really great music on it, but the game was difficult and it was hard for people to play. Not a lot of people bought a PSVR, and half of the people who
Mm.
did, put it on and threw up because it makes
Oh
everybody sick.
no.
Yeah, VR is really tough. It's your audience. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that's us working. That's our studio in Seattle. There's Jared. So we were working. That's Jamie. He's my other. Those are my two business partners. So we worked on Golem. It was called, and it was. I think it was a really cool game, and I would love to see somebody or us, if it's possible, port that to an Oculus and get just be able to like maybe come up with a new control scheme to help people play it more easily. It was a difficult game. I think it had a great score. It had beautiful art. Um, and then after that, we started working on a game called 6 Days in Fallujah,
Yeah.
and then so that went quite a long ways. I sort of left um, a little bit before they got to the open beta.
Mm-hmm.
So I helped, establish the studio. 6 Days in Fallujah is a very different kind of game. It's a real, squad-based tactical shooter game where you're playing as Marines modeled after Fallujah, and it's a pretty amazing game. And so the sound design and the early music for that was something I worked on, and very proud of it. And they have taken it. This is a trailer I worked on with this actual gameplay from the game. And it's pretty intense. It's very intense.
Yeah.
It's not forgiving. It's not. It's sort of like the difference between um, this is a game that's based on what it's like to be in war, not what it's like to do a war movie.
Right.
So
Right.
this is not you're not being John Wayne. You are actually trying to be tactical and breaching doors the way you have to, and you could get blown up by an IED at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you have to really understand. And this is the other thing: we have the actual Marines who fought in Fallujah. There
Right.
are advisors. We have documentary footage of them talking about it. And the thing, it got a little bit controversial because that's a controversial war, but we weren't trying to take you know, a hardcore political position about the Iraq war. We were trying to say, hey, this is what it was like to be a Marine in this conflict, and here's a little slice of it if you play on a video game. Um, and it was pretty cool because one of the things that that game has is you'll see it here coming up. Yeah, see this, it changes constantly. So every time you die, and
Okay.
you respawn, if you fail, you respawn and everything changes. So you can't learn the layout.
Oh,
You can't learn, oh, the bad guy's behind the couch, and when I open the
right.
door, he's going to jump up. No, it changes. The AI changes every time. The layout changes. The buildings change. They're all extremely accurate to what it was like in Fallujah, but you can never learn. You have to learn your tactics based on what you see in front of you all the time. So
Right. You can't learn the loop.
you can't learn it, right? You can't learn the loop, is right.
That is, yeah, that is that. So what, like, how did you end up getting into, into, and I know you were talking about first, I believe it was Gollum, and just it being was that a PSVR exclusive game or
Yeah,
was that open? Okay. And so I imagine, and like you were saying too, because the PSVR had, not only did it have its issues, but then it being locked to just PlayStation, it
right,
really limits then the audience that is able to access and play the game.
right. Me. Well, it was something that Sony, Sony knew that uh, they needed to sort of pay us and pay other developers to develop for that product because
Right.
the user base was so tiny. First of all, you had to have a good, PlayStation, and then you had to go out and buy the PlayStation VR. And with us,
Mm-hmm.
you had to play the PlayStation VR and play with the Move controllers, those sticks, or
Mm.
one. I think you only in our game you only use the one Move controller, but yeah, it just was one of those things where it just technically and from a hardware standpoint, it was the market was small, and so we were hoping, the PSVR would hit it big, but it just really kind of didn't. Now the Oculus is doing much better as a virtual reality device. Um, Whatever the new Oculus is, what's it called?
I think the like Rift
Yeah, yeah, the
3 or
Rift, right?
something.
It's Rift 3
Yeah.
now, whatever it is. So this is, we're talking the PSVR was almost 10 years ago.
Right.
Um, so it's been quite a while, and there's a lot of been advancement that has happened since then. And it's hard to know if Golem was a traditional, fully explorable, fantasy world that you moved around and went in any direction you wanted to, and it was a lot of movement, and that caused nausea for a lot of people.
Right.
But that was the choice that we had made. We wanted it to be like a traditional story-driven world-building game where you're in this really big world. And the most successful VR games tend to be things where you're in one place, or maybe you teleport to one other place and then you stay there and you look around, but you don't move through an environment, which causes motion sickness. So it's one of those things where what was fun about VR is that everybody who was developing for VR back then was experimenting with what is the best way to move through spaces. So as you see,
Mm-hmm.
like, this is great on video. You got this giant sword and you're moving up and you're seeing cool things, and it we could probably port this as a just a regular old PC game that's not in VR,
Right.
if we changed all the control scheme. But the whole thing was made for virtual reality, and the combat was virtual. So you're holding a move controller, which is your spear or your sword. But
Mm-hmm.
when you have to block, when a bad guy comes up and starts wanting to hit you and kill you, you have to block it by putting your sword up literally above your head. Like
Okay.
people who just think you just make small movements, like right here, they get killed. They actually
Yeah.
have to like really swing, and it's 1-to-1 combat when you're swinging. It's really like this guy here, like he's so you have to like, it's pretty intense.
That would be
It's
intense.
yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get that you know And one of these days, I'd love to see this ported to the new Rifts and see if we can come up with a control scheme where you have as much fun, but you don't have motion sickness.
Right. Well, and the technology, I mean, like you said too, the technology has changed
Yeah,
drastically. I mean,
yeah,
10 years, especially in technology terms, is
right,
is a lifetime, you know. So
yeah,
I think something like this, it would be way more viable. And I think it, you know, especially within the VR space, I think they need more games that are actual games, not
yeah,
just like
exactly.
tech demo things or,
A lot
hey,
of those
there's
games
this
felt like,
cool
yeah,
gimmick.
yeah. If they felt like tech demos, or they were sort of cool music games that, like you had to like do a rhythm thing or slash things
Mm-hmm.
in rhythm and stuff. And that's cool. Those are all fun. But we wanted to make a traditional like fantasy game that was like scary and cool, and like you had to do real stuff and move around and beat these guys up, and they were tough. These guys are hard to beat. As you can see,
I
they're
love
like,
it.
you have to learn their moves. Jamie is a designer, and he's sort of a Dark Souls fan, so
Okay.
he he wanted you to like, okay, you have to. This guy's going to hit you 3 times, and then he's going to give an opening. So you have to sort of learn by getting killed how
Yeah,
to beat
yeah, the
certain enemies.
punish
Yeah,
the punishment way.
yeah. But it was fun. Like you could be in different, cinematics where you're always in control of what you're looking at. So even
Mhm.
if you're like in a wagon that's moving, or you're, you know, under the house or whatever it is, you can just look any place you want, and that's fun. So even during the cinematic moments, you could look at any place you wanted to. The camera was always in your control by just looking. You were looking around in your environment. You could like turn around in your chair and look behind you, and it works.
Yeah.
Um, which is sort of the magic of VR. Um, which is why I still think someday VR is going to be a thing.
It
But we've
is.
been we've been predicted we've been predicting VR in the game business for like 20 years, and it just doesn't ever quite
It just
solve all
doesn't
the
catch.
issues. It
Yeah. I
doesn't
don't know
catch.
what
Yeah.
it is. It always turns into more of a novelty
Yep.
than something that like, hey, here's my main thing that I'm gonna go and do. And I mean, we see it now with Apple. I thought when Apple came out with their Pro, I was like, you guys are insane. Number
Yeah.
one, that is a super niche audience. The
Yes.
price point isn't even close to
No.
consumer friendly. I was like,
Nope.
all right, we'll see how it goes.
Well,
But
so I got convinced by watching their demo of it, and the
mhm.
movie that they made. Here's what it's going to be. I watched that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta get one of those. I'm going to be an early adopter. It's so great. And then I talked to one of my friends who knew the Apple guys forever. He's like, Marty, you might want to just wait a little bit on that. And yeah, sure enough, it wasn't couldn't live up to the hype. It just, and I started reading what people's experiences were really like, and I'm like, no, it's not. I
Not
don't know what it's doing now. You know what, there's going to be a point. It's just like, if you look at the Apple Newton, and, everything about it was almost right, but it was horrible, right? And now everybody in the world has an iPhone, and
True
there we are.
enough. True
So they did
enough.
get it right eventually, but like, yeah, maybe sometimes the first iteration of something is not the one. So,
Yeah, and
but
I don't even know necessarily if it's a technology. I just think it's a very niche group of people that could actually utilize the technology and what it can do and it's something that they could do. I would say, I was like, if I couldn't use this every single day in my daily life and it is not for something that I am potentially making money from, I don't
yeah,
have that kind of money to just be like, yeah, let's go
well,
ahead and get this.
yeah, and once you get to the third or fourth iteration, the price comes down, and like maybe
Right.
people can afford it. But I mean, still, if you think about how expensive the iPhone still is, but like
Mm-hmm.
it's so ubiquitous, everybody has it, and I forget who it was who came up with this idea, but it's like once if you can make a device that you will turn the car around and go back home if you forgot it. If
Right.
you're 20 minutes down the road and you're like, I forgot my iPhone, you'll actually turn around and go back to get your iPhone.
Yep.
And that means you've hit it. You've hit the kind of necessity device. And
Yeah.
yeah, no VR devices even come close to that sort of
Yeah.
idea. And there might be some people who leave their, Steam Deck or their Twitch at home before they go to the airplane, and then they'll turn around and go back to get it because they need it on the plane. But yeah, VR and the sort of the augmented reality devices that the Apple's trying to do, and whatever, all those different reality things that they were talking about there, none of that seems to have really become necessary yet. But your
No.
iPhone, everybody needs their mobile phone, right? I mean, you either got an Android or an iPhone.
Yeah.
Everybody has one of the two, right? So
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is 100% correct. So I know we've kind of gotten a little bit off path here, and I don't want to eat up too much of your time. Again, let's just very quickly. I know that you said you've kind of semi-retired, and we've talked about the full circle moment,
yeah,
where you are, and you have here, I believe it was 2024. You came in, you ran for the, I believe it was Congressional District 3,
yep.
on the Republican primary side. Tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about what that experience is. I know that you are, again, running a lot more time because you came in like with 3 months before the primary last time. Now
Yeah,
you've
yeah.
got some breathing room. You can fully form a campaign. Let us know what's
Yes.
going on there.
Well, I never ever thought at this stage of my life I would do something as drastic as like run for Congress. But I talked to some people. My daughter is got a 501c3, a charitable
Hmm.
organization called Foster Kinship, and she had come to me, and we've been helping her for 16 years with this foundation, with this charitable organization, and it's
Hmm.
it's just an amazing thing. So I when we moved to Las Vegas, I'm like, how can I help here? And she said there's a guy running for a state assembly. He's a really cool guy. I think you'd like him. um, my daughter is relatively apolitical. She's very down the middle. She can't take sides really, but she thought I would like this one guy. So I met him, and then he said, "Let me introduce you to some of my people I'm working with." And then these people are Joe Lombardo's people,
Mm, okay.
and they said, "Why don't you run for Congress?" And I was like, "That's crazy. Why would I do that?" And they basically just really didn't like anybody else who was running in that district. So I said, okay, so I'm sort of the Hail Mary guy. Like, is this like a, and the political consultant said, Marty, it's really hard to find good people to run for office. And I thought, well, that's probably why there's so many rotten people in Congress, because
Right.
good people tend to say, I'm not going to do something crazy, stupid like that. So I thought it was just going to be sort of this interesting learning experience. I took it very seriously. I ran. There were four main there was a bunch of people in the race, but four of us
Hmm.
sort of split the vote. I did not come in first, and I realized very quickly that you got to be in it a little bit longer than 3 months. You've got
Right.
to really hit the ground and meet everybody in the district, and that's a lot of work. But I didn't think I would do this again, so it was like one and done. But yeah, I am a fan of. I'm a conservative Republican, and I believe in, strong borders and strong families, and I believe in a lot of things that I see um, as part of the administration's plan. And so I was very happy to see Donald Trump win. And I went to the inauguration, and when I was there, I was in Washington D.C. Some of the people there were like, "You should run again." And
Hmm.
this time it's a different thing. Rather than sort of running, I'm running to make sure that the Trump administration has a majority in the House and doesn't lose the majority. I think Trump deserves to have 4 solid years of of getting his agenda going, instead of two. Because if he loses the majority and halfway, the last 2 years of his term are going to be impeachments and lawfare and just nothingness. So I think he deserves to have, to keep the majority, and so I feel pretty strongly that I want to try to take this district. The other three people who I ran against last time, they're not in the race, so I'm like, okay, I think I got a shot this time. So there's some new people that I don't know very well, but I'm taking it very seriously. I was in Winnemucca over the weekend,
Okay,
which is,
I've got family up there.
oh, do you really?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so are
up
you,
in that
have you,
area.
okay, are you a longtime Nevada person?
I'm not actually. It's my partner. My partner, her parents live up in that area.
Oh,
So
okay, cool. Well,
they're actually headed up there here like this weekend.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite a drive, by the way. You
Yes, it
start to realize
is.
when you're doing this, like, well, luckily, District 3 is all contained in Clark County. It does
Okay.
go out to the California border, but it goes all the way down to the Arizona border where Laughlin is. So there's
Hmm.
still a pretty good area that I have to, get to know and get to know the people. But there's two big counties in Nevada. There's Washoe County, which has, Tahoe and Carson City and Reno, which is up north. And then
Hmm.
there's Clark County, which is where most of the people are. But there's 15 other counties which are considered rural counties, and they're huge. I mean,
Right.
they're not heavily populated, but they're beautiful desert mountains, and the expanse is just amazing. So to fly into Reno and then drive all the way to Winnemucca was really quite the experience. I realized this state is gigantic. And when you drive for like an hour and you don't see another human being, you're like, this is amazing. It's like
Yeah.
there's so much land, and so much of the land in Nevada is owned by the federal government, which is
Hmm.
a thing, right? I think we need to have a discussion about that. Should the federal government really own this much land? Can't we do
Right.
something? So, yeah, there's a lot of very specific Nevada issues that I want to not only get accustomed to, educated about, but I want to come up with some plans that are good for us here in Nevada. All three of my grandsons were born in my district.
Hmm.
My two daughters are living here now. We're all within 5 minutes of each other, and I really care about the future of my kids and grandkids. And I don't like the current congresswoman. I don't think I think she's just a rubber stamp for policies that I don't agree with.
Hmm.
Um, and I want to change that. So I'm running for Congress again, and go to martyforcongress.vote or martyforcongress.com. Either one works. And you can see my website and go, what in the world is the Halo guy doing running for Congress?
Well, and Governor Lombardo also on in 2024 had endorsed you as well, like you said.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm looking for, this time I'm sort of saying, look, I I think this district is important enough, and it's what's known as it's not just a swing district. It's a district that voted for Trump in the presidency, but voted for the Democrat in for Congress.
right.
And there's 535 districts in the United States, and only 13 of them did that happen. And so
Hmm.
those 13 districts are being targeted by the Democrats and Republicans as districts that could be flipped from Democrat to Republican. And of course, there are you know districts that could be flipped Republican to Democrat. So the political fight is very, very intense. There's going to be a lot of money spent in Las Vegas
Yep.
and Nevada around this specific race. And I just believe I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I got to get in early. I got to start raising a lot of money. I kicked in a lot of my own money. Um, these things are very expensive, and you're going to have
Yeah.
national people and small dollar donations coming in from all over the place. And it's a very, very different way to spend your time thinking about politics and running for office. It's not something that was on my bucket list. I got to tell you, but it's a fascinating thing to do. I feel strongly that this is an important thing to do. So I'm putting 100% of my effort into this right now, and I think that the Trump administration, from a tactical standpoint, has to come in and say, just like Lombardo did last time,
Hmm.
uh, you know, I think Trump and that administration needs to say, this is the person we want to have in Congress in this district. And I've made the commitment that, like, whoever he says, this is who I want. If he says me, great. If he doesn't say me, then I'll say, okay, then I won't fight. I won't have a bloody primary battle. If Trump
Mhm.
chooses somebody else, I'm going to say, okay, then I'm behind that person. So I'll get out. But I'm going forward at this moment as though I'm the anointed one. We'll see what happens.
Well, definitely wishing you the best of luck. Definitely keeping an eye and all that stuff as well. Like you said, please, Marty, I don't want to take up too much of your time. Lay it on us. Let everybody know where they can go find out more information about that stuff, and then just more information in general, what you have going on and all that.
Well, this is the main thing I have going on. I do have a podcast. You can watch my
Mm.
podcast at Marty O'Donnell, the Marty O'Donnell Show podcast. On You can get it on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. I've had a lot of fun people, especially I'll have some political people on, but I've also had a lot of people who were part of the original Bungie Halo team, just talking about the good old days, making the games and making music and playing games and stuff. So it's a fun podcast to watch. You can watch it. It's on my YouTube channel, Marty O'Donnell. Um, and then you can follow me on Twitter. Oh, there we go. There's me with my podcast. Wow, you're prepared. I like this. Good job. Uh, and this is a podcast. This is my most recent podcast of me in this place I'm sitting in right now, talking to a guy who's a congressman from Indiana. So that was pretty interesting. Talk to a fellow Midwesterner, find out what his story was all about. But the one before this one was Ed Freeze, who was the guy who bought Bungie um, from Chicago back in 2000 and moved us all out to Redmond,
Oh.
Washington. So my podcast is all over the place. But if you really want to know about my political positions and you want to support me, go to martyforcongress.com, and you might be able to put that up on the screen. I don't know, but it's martyforcongress.com, and there it is. It's like you can go there and learn everything you want to learn about me and learn about my positions and communicate with me. You can contact me. You can ask me questions and I'll answer them. My updates will be there. There we go. There we go. There it is. Ooh,
I
it's
love
looking
it.
nice. Um, Fighting for an affordable America. See, I think, here's my thing. I'm going to tell you one of my main things is I grew up in a time where one good job was enough. If you
Right.
had one good job, you could raise a family. You could buy a home, raise a family. Your kids could get educated and have clothes and food and go out to the movies and maybe take a vacation. And that has stopped. It doesn't work as easy as it used to. And I think we got to get back to understanding what are the reasons why we have so much trouble, and people need two jobs, and the husband and wife both have to work, and they have to work multiple jobs, and there's so much struggle, and that's just there are reasons for that, and I think we can make one good job great again. So I really think there is a way to do it, and I think there's political solutions that we have to look at, and they go across the aisle, right? It's not only the Republicans, but everybody wants that to come back. Family is still super important, and having a good job and raising your kids and grandkids, like this is what most normal common sense people want. And for some reason, we've drifted away from this, and I think it's time to get back to common sense. So that's where I'm at.
Absolutely. Marty, again, thank you so much just for taking the time, jibber jabbing with us, letting us know, and kind of getting some insight on to, musically what you've been doing, but then kind of sharing too where you are here and just what you're trying to bring here to the state of Nevada as well. So, again, thank you so much.
Well, thanks, Ryan. I think Nevada is an amazingly great state. I had never in my life thought I would end up living here. We've been here almost 5 years. We've been visiting here to my daughter for 16 years. And I love the state. I love the West. I love being here. And I really want to just see this place thrive. and it's great meeting other, Las Vegas people. We'll stay in touch, Ryan. This has been great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you
Okay,
again,
cool.
Marty. And
Thanks.
thank you guys so much for listening. Again, you can check us out over on YouTube at Pixelated Harmony. Of course, we also have itty bitty gaming news going on. That's every Monday through Friday. Just 2 minutes video game news. We've got the CFG Gamecast that live streams every Sunday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. Of course, those episodes come out on Mondays as well. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. You can find me over at Smitty2447 on most social platforms. I hope you guys have an amazing month. We love your faces, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.